So what we're going to do is we're going to take this photo right here and we're going to make it look like this. Now you'll notice that this face has several blemishes on it and things like that, but using the a couple of different tools, a couple layer modes and a couple things, we're going to be able to remove all of this. And actually I kind of talked about how this works and I explained the general process and the idea behind this on my webpage. So if you're actually viewing this in YouTube, I recommend that you click on the link below and it'll take you to my blog and you'll be able to read the actual content and kind of have an understanding on the theory behind how all of this works. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to kind of clean up her forehead a little bit. Now, I'm sure you're thinking that I'm just going to pull out the clone stamp tool and I'm just going to clone away all of this acne and all of these blemishes. I'm actually not going to do that. The first thing I'm going to do is focus on just simply changing the color of all of the red to match her skin tone. And to do that, I'm just going to right click on my layer and click duplicate layer so that if I mess it up I always have one to go back to. And I'm just going to click colors, hue saturation. I'm going to select red, and that way the only thing that's going to be changed is the color red. So what I'm telling Gimp to do is change the color red to a different color. In this case I want to give it more of a yellow tint. So I'm just going to turn it up just a little bit, and it looks like 9 gets rid of the vast majority of that irritation. So we'll go ahead and press OK. If you zoom out, her face, the thing is her entire face, you know, it did it to everything in the picture. We don't really want to do it to the whole picture. It kind of makes her look a little pale. But on her forehead especially, we really want to kind of keep that more yellowish tone. So to do that, we're going to right click on this layer and we're going to add a layer mask, and we're going to mask off what we want to be yellow and what we don't want to be yellow. So we're going to set our layer mask to black full transparency and click add. Now as always, if you don't understand layer masks and you don't know about them, check out the tutorial linked on my actual blog page above this video. So now that we have a layer mask embedded, we're going to go ahead and get our tablet out and just kind of brush away the areas that we don't want to be red with the color white. So we'll switch over to white and we're just gonna, well, let's get a soft brush. Here we go. And just brush away that information. Make it a little bigger. And just kind of brush that to a yellow tone. There we go. That's better. So now whenever we zoom out, you'll see there's the before and there's the after. Now I think that's actually a little bit too strong, so I'm going to adjust the opacity back on this layer just a hair, just to see what we end up with. See, that looks pretty good. So now that we have that yellow, we're going to turn this into our main image. So we're going to right click on this layer and we're going to click new from visible, and that's going to be the layer that we base the rest of this image off of. Okay, just for organizational purposes, I went ahead and put these two layers into a layer group, and I'm just going to hide that and save it for later. If you don't know anything about layer groups, go ahead and check out the lesson I list and I mentioned above this video. I would show you how to do it in this video, but I can't do dragging and dropping in this because for some reason my recording software won't let me do that. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and start this effect. And the effect is called frequency separation. The idea behind it is pretty much you take an image and you break it into two different things. You break it into two different layers. One layer defines the edge and the other layer will define the color. So to do that, we're going to right click on this layer and we're going to click duplicate layer, and we're going to then duplicate it a second time. We're going to hide the top layer, we're going to click on the middle one, and we're going to click filters, blur, Gaussian blur. And we're just going to pull this out a little bit. This layer is going to become our color layer. And what it's going to do is it's going to essentially determine what color everything is on the image. So just blur it in, some amount similar that gives you a similar result to this. For this image, 25 pixels seems to work quite well. So now I have a blurred image, but I don't have those edges. And in order to get those edges back, I need to use this layer. And this is where things get kind of weird. To do that, I'm going to click on my layer mode, and I'm going to set this layer mode to grain extract. And you're going to get this really crazy looking gray image. And then I'm going to right click on this layer, and I'm going to click new from visible. And what that's going to do is that's going to create a layer based on what Gimp saw at that point. So then I'm just going to right click on the layer that I initially created the grain extract with and delete it. And then I'm going to set this layer that we just created that we set to new from visible, and we're going to set it to grain extract again. And what it does is it creates this edge and the blur, and together they create the final image. I want to stress that this, the only two layers that are visible are the blurry layer and this weird gray one, but somehow together with the layer modes and everything applied to it, it creates an exact replication of the original image. Like if I move the base image above all of these, you'll notice that there's no difference if I hide or show them at all. They're exactly the same. The only thing is I now have control over how everything looks. Like I can remove edges much easier now because I have an edge layer and I have a color layer. And to kind of help explain what I mean, the easiest way to do it is really to just kind of show you. So if you look, and if I hide the blur layer, you're going to see this weird gray image. Now if I click on my clone tool right here, and I hold in control and I select a source, and then I click over here, what it's going to do, if I'm on the right layer, here we go. If I hold in control and click, and I click over here on a blemish, which as you can tell those edges were blemishes, what it's going to do is it's going to actually remove that information, but it's still copying edge information over here. So whenever you turn your layer back on, it looks really good. Especially if you're actually using a hard brush, which is really weird to think that you're ever going to use a hard brush to get rid of details like this, but it works. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to do the clone again, this time with the color layer on. So holding control, and I'm going to click on a source with the clone tool, and it just wipes it out. Completely gets rid of it all. And you can see that I'm able to just get rid of blemishes that I don't like quite fast. Now if you zoom out, you'll notice though that there's still red spots where those blemishes were, and that's because our blur layer still has them. So what you have to do is then you go back to your base copy layer, or we're going to rename these. We're going to name this color, and we're going to rename this edge. So if you go to your color layer and you then use the clone tool there, shortcut key for clone is C, and control and click somewhere, you'll be able to actually change the colors instead of the edge information. Now the thing is about the color layer is you should probably use a soft brush. So switch back over to the soft brush and just kind of get rid of some of those colors. Like that. And if you zoom out, you can kind of see that we're able to get rid of this stuff pretty efficiently. And this time I'm using my mouse, and that's just because all these strokes are really, really short brush strokes. And I recently changed my shortcut on my mouse so that my scroll wheel makes my brush bigger and smaller. It's a nice little tweak, and you can change that in the preferences. But the goal is to just kind of go through and find all the red blotches and pick a sample that's a similar color, and just go through and holding control and click and try that, and if it doesn't work, try a different area, and just keep on trying until you get a good close match. That's pretty good. See, this is a pretty big, there we go. already you can see a pretty big difference. If I move my base layer up for reference and I turn it on, you'll notice it's gone and you can't even really tell that I was in there. So we'll just continue going back and forth between the edge and the color layer and just removing these blemishes. So now I'm on the edge layer, and again, with the edge layer you're better off using a hard brush. So get your hard brush out and just remove these details that shouldn't be there. And before and after. Okay, so that looks alright to me. What you're going to want to do now is you're going to want to kind of get rid of some of these pores on her forehead. And to do that, we're going to actually make our edge layer a little bit blurry in some areas. And to do that, we're going to just simply mask off parts of the edge layer so that all that shows through is the blurry color layer. So to do that, we're going to right click on our layer and we're going to click Add Layer Mask, and we're going to set it to white full opacity and click Add. And we're going to get our Wacom tablet out and turn the opacity of our brush down to about 20%, somewhere around in there, and switch over to the color black. And make sure you're coloring on the layer mask that you just created and just brush. And what's going to happen right away is it's going to make the forehead just a little bit less sharp, and that's going to get rid of some of those pores on the head. Make sure you get them near the eyebrows too. And then you'll notice right away just that first pass through made a bit of a difference. So we'll do it one more time, but this time we're not going to do the whole head. We're only going to do it in the parts that really need attention. And remember, your Wacom tablet has opacity, so on top of that 20%, if you're brushing lightly, it's going to do less than 20%. So you can really just stroke in the areas that need some attention. See, I overdid it there a bit, so I'm going to undo. And then if you zoom out, you'll look and decide if you like that or not. See, I think I overdid it near the nose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the color white, and I'm just going to brush that information back in, because what happens whenever you brush white on a layer mask is it's going to make the edge layer visible again. There we go. I like that. So now we're going to go ahead and go back to our edge layer, and we're going to zoom in and try to get rid of some of these fine lines down around the eyes. And to do that, we're just going to repeat the process of cloning. So switch back over to a hard brush and just, oh yes, and also make sure your opacity is at 100, of course. And there we go. Just kind of clone that information away. Oops, there we go. So we'll go ahead and just get rid of these fine lines a little bit right here on the cheeks. Just, we're on our edge layer and we're just using the clone tool again, and we're just kind of cloning that stuff away like that. So there's the before and there's the after. So as you can see, the process just pretty much consists of just tediously going through and cloning away details you don't like, whether it be on the edge layer or if it's on the color layer. If you see something weird in the color layer, you just switch back over to your blurry brush, or your soft brush, and you just kind of normalize it like that. And this big area right here, we're going to work on that next. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start adding some, we're going to do some dodging and burning, is what most of the photographers call it. Really, all it is for me is it's a layer set to the layer mode overlay, and the layer is either the color white or the color black. And you'll see what I mean. So I'm going to right click on my layer and I'm going to click New Layer. And I'm going to name this one Dodge. And I'm going to fill that layer with the color white. I'm going to set its layer mode to overlay. You'll notice it makes the whole layer really, really bright. So I'm going to right click on this layer and I'm going to click Add Layer Mask, and I'm going to set it to black full transparency and press Add. So now what I have is a layer with a layer mask, and I'm able to dynamically control what parts of the layer are brighter and what parts of the layer are not brighter. So you'll see I can just kind of brush in lightness and change it however I want, however I see fit. And again, you'll notice my opacity is still at 20% because we don't really want a high opacity for this, because we really just want to kind of add these details in little bits at a time, you know, and just kind of focus around the eyes. Make this a little smaller, brush in right there, and then, you know, if you get something that's too much, you just press the X key on your keyboard, that switches back to black, and you can just brush that extra away, you know, like right in here. Maybe that's a bit much. And you'll notice I made my brush bigger, and I'm just kind of fading it in. That's what I'm doing, is I'm removing details, and I'm just using fading. So, you know, I'm on black, my brush is big, and I'm just doing these big swoops to get rid of that information, because remember, the color black removes the information and the color white adds it. And you know, you just add information where you see fit. I'd like to do one of these, kind of accentuate all of that. Now you could add some of this to the inside of the eye and a couple of things like that if you really wanted to, but personally I don't really like to do that, because you guys are fully aware, if you've seen it yet, I have a tutorial on editing eyes specifically, and that is also linked above, and you can see what I would do to these eyes to really make them pop more than they already are. Get her a little bit in the middle of the nose. Here we go. Okay, so let's look at it before and after. Keep ourselves grounded. See, it looks too bright. Whenever I look at it, it looks like her face is glowing. So I'll switch back over to the color black, and I'm going to bring this back down to earth a bit. I'm just going to kind of very lightly with my Wacom tablet brush, just to kind of get rid of some of that information just a little bit. That's a little better. So there's before and after. That looks a little better. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to move on to burning, which is the process of darkening or making specific parts of the image darker. Alright, so let's go ahead and get rid of that. And then there's one more right here, but that looks like that's a color layer problem, not an edge layer. Oh, I stand corrected. It was an edge. You'll notice that oftentimes all you really need to do is adjust the edge layer, not so much the color layer. If you look here, you're actually able to still see some pores on her cheeks and on her nose. So we're going to work to get rid of that again. And to do that, we're just going to go back to the layer mask on our edge layer, and we're going to work on that. So get your Wacom tablet out, adjust your opacity back down to 20% or so, and then make use of the soft brush, and just make sure you're brushing in the color white. And just soften those cheeks just a little bit. Correction, I'm sorry. It's supposed to be coloring black, not white. There we go. Yeah, just a little bit. Just enough to take that edge off. You'll see even that's too much. So go back. Just lightly switch back to the color white and just kind of get rid of that just a little bit. Now if you zoom out and you look at it before and after, you can see how it looks. It's very, very subtle, but those subtle changes make huge differences. And now that I've zoomed out, I also noticed that right here I've got this little bright spot that just is glaring out at me, so I'm going to work to get rid of that. To do that, I'm just going to switch back over to my color layer, click on my clone tool using a soft brush, and just clone an area that I think is going to match and get rid of it. That's better. So there's an after, before, after, before, after. So we've got a little bit of action here. So we'll click on our edge, clone tool, and you'll notice at this point I'm just kind of finding little things zoomed out that I notice, and I'm just kind of wiping them out. Another one right there. Zoomed in too far. There we go. And I'm just using the clone tool. Before, after. It looks like we got something on the corner of the lip there. Oh. Don't want to get rid of the whole lip. That might need a soft brush. Since you're right on an edge, sometimes you're better off. There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is going to right click on my dodge layer and I'm going to click new layer. I'm going to name this layer burn, and I'm going to fill it with the color black, and I'm going to set its layer mode to overlay. And by the way, I forgot to mention this. If you don't understand how layer modes work, I also have a tutorial for that. I will link that above as well. Go ahead and check it out. So now I'm going to right click on this burn layer and I'm going to click add layer mask, and again you'll note that the black overlay makes the whole image darker. And now we're pretty much doing exactly what we did with dodge, only instead of making it lighter, we're making it all darker. So set the layer mask to black, click add, and now we have control of what parts we want to be darker and what parts we don't. So now if I brush with the color white, it makes those parts of the image dark again. So I'm going to start with this eye right here, just kind of add just a little bit there, you know, and maybe stress on the cheekbones. And I'm going to turn my opacity down a little more, maybe down to 10. A little bit, so you'd be amazed at how very little it takes to really make this stuff stick out. I mean, even just that little bit is a lot. And honestly, I don't even know if I like that. So I'm going to switch back over to the color white and just kind of brush that away. And then, you know, maybe add some in the corner here. And then make my brush nice and big and try to fade away some of that extra. There's the before, after, the original and after. And honestly, I recommend that you look on various like sites and you look at different things and, you know, different parts to try to accentuate and exaggerate and what part of the face is the best to, you know, dodge and what part is the best to burn, because it's very different with every photo and it's, you know, very much up to you. Zoom out, see it before and after. It's like a whole new face. There we go. So I went ahead and I pulled the opacity of my dodge back a little bit because it in its entirety I thought was too bright. So I just clicked on it and I pulled the opacity back to 80, and now it looks, I think, a lot more reasonable. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my burn layer and I'm going to look at her mascara a little bit, tweak it. Click on your paintbrush, scale it way down, and just brush with the color white. Just to kind of bring it back, pull the opacity up. Again, watch that tunnel vision. You're having a bigger effect on your image than you think whenever you do stuff like this, especially whenever you're zoomed way in. If I zoom out and I show you now, before and after, there's what it was, and there's, well, go figure. The one time I say that, it doesn't really seem to change it. So let's try this again. Yeah, it's because my opacity is too low. Oops. Just kind of brush that. Try to fill in those gaps. Switch back over to here. Do the same thing again. Let me zoom out. Now look at the before and after, and you'll see it's pretty dramatic. It's almost too dramatic. So, you know, it's probably not a bad idea to switch back over to the color white, or I'm sorry, the color black, and just kind of lightly brush over that to kind of get rid of some of that edge. Zoom out, look at the before and after. That looks pretty good. So that's essentially the process to do this. Obviously, every time you do this, you're going to get a different result, and every photo is different, so the exact process will be pretty different. But the general idea of, you know, using an edge layer and a color layer and then a dodge layer and a burn layer, they're pretty much the same. So I hope this helped. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. I'd be more than happy to help you. Thanks.